our leadoff hitter today, Dusty Dvoracek. Dusty, I was over in your neck of the nape of the woods doing a little playoff preview, playoff rankings show last night. Playoffs. What's your opinion on how college football handles these ranking shows? Number one, they do the first one on election night, which I hope in 4 years from now is adjusted. And they get all the bells and whistles, and you have all the analysts and all the breakdowns. And then they treat the second one like the middle child. It's like, all right, here's the rankings. See you guys later. Enjoy basketball. Like nothing, and that was it. I would think that, and you had an action going on, so there wasn't a separate show on ESPNU or anything. You would think there'd be a little bit more on this, but it also, I guess, magnifies that we still got a long way to go. And truly, these second playoff rankings don't mean that terribly much, do they?
I mean, they mean something. To your point, a lot will be settled. You know, I don't know. I think it's also just an element of we just like to complain to some degree.
Thank you.
Not saying
That's
you're
me.
A complainer.
Please do.
But
Call
like,
me out.
I heard a lot of people last week saying, "Why do we have these shows? Like, just give me the teams."
Yeah.
And then
this could be an email. This
and
could
then
be an email.
And they just give you the teams. And it's like, wow, what about the show? I thought there was a show. We're never satisfied, right? That's just kind of the nature of us as humans. You know, I thought last night was interesting in a couple of areas. You know, this stuck out to me the most. I don't know about you, but so there's a couple. I was wanting to see where Miami and Georgia, where they would drop to. Miami going from 4 to 9. They dropped 5 spots after their loss to Georgia Tech. Georgia going from 3 to 12. They dropped 9 spots after they get crushed by Ole Miss there in Oxford. So that obviously stuck out most notably to me. I think it made sense. You could not put Georgia in front of Bama or Ole Miss. They've lost to both of those teams, all sharing a 2-loss record currently. I thought Miami would slide further, so that stuck out to me a little bit. The other thing that really grabbed my attention was Indiana and BYU. I guess I was just somewhat conditioned to think that with 3 and 4 losing, 5, 6, 7 would just naturally slide upward a notch, right? And you'd have Texas move up in place. Like Texas would go to 5 to 3. Penn State would go from 6 to 4. Tennessee would go from 7 to 5, so on and so forth. Indiana would be at 6. BYU would be at 7. And instead you had, after a lot of hand-wringing last week, Indiana jump Tennessee, and they go from 8 to 5. So now you've got undefeated 10-0 Indiana in your top 5, which, by the way, 4 of the top 5 in the Big Ten is just eye-opening. Mm-hmm. And you got BYU after their narrow victory against Utah, controversial ending. You had them actually jump Tennessee. I found that so interesting because, especially when I listened to Ward Manuel give his rationale, like, I would have had that way last week. Why do it this week? And it was honestly because, like, you know, Tennessee won by 19. They kneeled it out inside the 10 to close the game out. Could have easily won by 26, and they did it without their starting quarterback the entire second half. Like, and Indiana was less impressive than we've seen them all year. And BYU, I mean, again, like, if you watch that game, like, you could argue they shouldn't have won. Give them both credit for winning. I just thought, why this week do you decide to move them over Tennessee? And it just reminded me that this committee can do whatever it wants, whenever it wants. And they really don't have to rationalize or justify anything. Because if you listen to Ward Manuel, his reasoning for moving BYU and Indiana in front of Tennessee this week was all about what they had done previously, not what they had done necessarily this week, which begs the question, are they listening to the outside noise? Because they took a lot of heat for having Indiana, BYU behind Tennessee last week, and now they jump them this week. So that was one thing that I found noteworthy.
You know, that's great. Dusty, that's exactly what I was thinking last night when I was looking at this. Sure, you had in the rankings, you had your 3rd and 4th ranked teams lose, but I mean, when you hear Ward Manuel saying things like Indiana had an impressive win over a really good Michigan team, and that Michigan team is 5-5,
right?
You're like, I think they heard some of the heat last week.
Right.
Now, can you help me? This is the only complaint that I have, and all the number nerds don't have a problem with it, so I guess maybe I shouldn't either. Why is Penn State getting a pass in this? Okay, so you're with me on that one a bit?
And even Texas, like, you know, if you did a blind just resume, if you did a blind assessment, you could argue SMU has a better resume than Texas or Penn State. I mean, SMU's got a win over Louisville, who's currently sitting at number 19. And they've also got a loss to their number 6 team, and that was before they made the quarterback switch.
Right.
Like, you could argue that they're right on par. Interestingly enough, though, if you go back to the BCS rankings and use just the computers, just input all the data, you know it spits out the exact same top 5?
Are you serious?
Exact same. It puts Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Indiana in your top 5. As a matter of fact, the only thing that they had different in the top 8 was they had Tennessee ahead of BYU. So the computers. So, but yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know why Penn State gets a bit of a pass. I actually thought they were probably maybe at their best and most impressive this past week against Washington, but you know, they had already given them somewhat of a pass previously, having them ranked where they were. But again, if we're noting Washington as some great win, that's, you know, I think that's somewhat debatable. Another thing that, you know, that I thought was noteworthy, again, this is just kind of the dork in me, but Tulane checking in at 25, where they did. And as much as anything, because if we get a Tulane Army American Championship, you know, it's setting the stage for if Boise State slips up anywhere, you know, Tulane having a great opportunity to be the representative of the group of 5 in the college football playoff. So since that Oklahoma lost, Tulane's undefeated, and they've been playing a lot of really, really good football. So I thought them climbing into finding a way into the top 25, that grabbed my attention a little bit.
Would there be any debate between an unbeaten Army and one-loss Boise State?
Oh, no, there wouldn't, because Army would get in. Because an unbeaten Army would mean they beat Notre Dame next week, Josh. So if Army beats Notre Dame next week and they run the table, they're going to jump Boise State. I think that's going to be a long shot, but that's a big if. I mean, I think Army – now, if you're asking me an undefeated in American play Army team, no, I don't think they would jump Boise State. But if Army runs it out and they go beat – that game's at a neutral site next week. I think it's at Yankee Stadium, if memory serves. If they go into –
Army Notre Dame game?
Yeah. If they go into Yankee Stadium and take down the Irish, I think Army's going to have a massive jump up the rankings.
You're right. Hey, I brought one more team on this, then we'll get to the news coming out of Norman yesterday. I was on a show last night, and I brought up, hey, there's even, you know, Washington State that's still alive in this whenever they show up in the rankings where they are.
Yeah.
So you have, and I was shy, I don't know, Washington State's not in it. So I don't know if the host just didn't know the rules or what. But you're looking at a situation where right now you have three teams in Army, Washington State, and Boise State who are battling for that group of 5 spot. And it's wild because, Dusty, they could get it at the expense of – and the Georgia-Tennessee thing will work itself out when they play this weekend, and you know, maybe Georgia has to worry about Georgia Tech too. But it's really going to churn up the debate if one of those teams makes it at the expense of like a Georgia or, say, an Alabama. Then we're really going to see the automatic qualifier under the microscope, aren't we?
Yes, we are. So 100%. Because in the current, again, there's a lot of stuff to be played out. But to your point, in the way if this was the final rankings, the Georgia Bulldogs would get bounced for Boise State.
That's right.
Who in who believes that Boise State's a better team than Georgia?
Not many.
I don't think many. But this is the system we have, and this is a reality that everybody knew. Don't put yourself on the bubble if you don't want it to burst. So, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of hand wringing. I'll give you another. Like, there's some scenarios, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do think all this is fascinating, and it's all brand new. So, number one, I disagree with you, and I hate to do that because I love
go ahead.
You, but I disagree with you.
On
Washington State has zero chance of making the playoff.
Oh, okay. I'll be happily tap out on that one.
And I say that now. I'm going to say that, and just complete anarchy could break out. They don't have a championship game.
That's right.
So, that's going to make it very, very difficult for them because you have to have at least 8 teams in a conference to get a championship game. And in order to be one of the group of 5 automatic qualifiers, you have to play in a championship game. Washington State cannot They're technically in the Pac-12, which we don't know what they are. They're a 2-team league. So that means they have to come in as an at-large team, which would mean if the group of 5 representative is outside the top 12, they'd have to be 11 or higher. I just don't think, given Washington State took an L the way that they did to Boise State and what's remaining on their schedule, they have any chance to get inside the top 11. So that's all I would say. I think Washington State's having a magical year. It's incredible. They deserve a ton of praise, but I don't think that they have any legitimate chance to make it into the conversation for the college football playoff. That would be my one thought there. Number 2 is, and I don't know the answer to this question, but I'll pose it to you. I had this talk with Ben Hartsock on my show this morning. How are we going to look at these conference championship games in the Big 12 and in the ACC? Because is BYU, let's say BYU finishes the regular season 12-0, and let's say they sit there at number 6. Let's just leave them right where they're at. Are they a lock to get in if they lose to Colorado in a Big 12 championship?
I don't know. Seeing them right now at, where were they last night? 6? 6. Yeah, seeing them at 6 would lead me to believe they have a shot. But I also,
if you're on the committee, and this is just like philosophically, would you hold it against the team that's playing an additional game than other teams that aren't a championship game and potentially drop them as many as 5 or 6 spots if they played in a championship game and lost while other teams were sitting at home in their respective conferences? Like, we know the conference championship game can help you because if you win one of those Power 4 conference championship games, you're automatically in, automatic qualifier. But how much should it penalize you if going into championship weekend, you are already safe and in a good place?
This is one of those great kind of double-edged swords where you get the money for the and this almost goes back to like the BCS era too, right? Where, hey, the conference championship game is great, but in the end, Dusty, it could end up costing you a team in the playoffs, right?
Right. And gaining one you want at the same time, right? Because they'd still get Colorado. I'm just wondering, like, as we sit here, if I'm being completely honest, I have real concern that the ACC and the Big 12 get 2 teams in.
I don't think either one of them are going to get 2.
So think about that scenario, though. Think about if BYU, say they finish the regular season 5, 3 Tuesdays from yesterday, 3 weeks from today, we're sitting here talking, and BYU going into championship weekend is number 5 in the country, and they lose to Colorado and they drop all the way out. Can you imagine that conversation?
Oh. That's still what we've talked about, Dusty. That's what we've talked about. How are Big 12 and ACC competition, how is it going to be compared to, say, 2 to 3 lost SEC teams? I mean, your buddy Danny Cannell was all fired up about this the other day. I think he was trying to push for Louisville to be higher ranked in his little rant that you.
He's a piece of work.
But I guess so. If you're Brett Yormark, I'm just talking about, or Jim Phillips, in your mind, you're right. You get that one guaranteed spot for your conference champion. I mean, would it almost be but see, you can't count on BYU staying in that top 12 without a major quality win right now, right? I guess SMU, right?
It's just interesting. Because if a BYU non-Big 12 champion is compared with Georgia, Georgia's 10-2, and they've got wins over Texas, over Tennessee, over Clemson. Are you going to put BYU in over Georgia?
No.
I ask you, is the committee going to do that?
No way. No way, no how.
I would have to think.
What do you think, Josh?
I would have to think this is no-brainer statement, but the fashion of the game itself would factor in a lot under that scenario.
The eye test, right?
If you lose by a couple of scores, then I think you're out. If it's a classic and it goes down to the wire and you lose, and now all of a sudden you're a one-loss team but you were undefeated before the game started, then I think probably there's a good argument to put 2 Big 12 teams in.
Similar to, though it wasn't too, similar to TCU when they had their magical undefeated season, yet they lost in the championship game and then still got in the playoff, right? They lost to Kansas State, and I believe it was in overtime, if memory serves.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Interesting.
Anyway, sorry. I hate to take you down a rabbit hole. There's just a lot to unpack that's going to be.
First of all, I've had to come to. First, let me back up a little bit more. I thought Washington State and Oregon State were getting the treatment like a group of 5. I completely, totally missed on that. So my mind has been spinning since that. I thought if they were, above a Boise State or an Army, they'd get in. So I've been wrong on that front, number one. Number two, if you're an ACC commissioner, Big 12 commissioner, there's a part of you that's like, yeah, I don't mind if, it looks like Miami might be able to survive a second loss with how little they felt last night. But you almost feel like your path to get a second team in would be for your favorite to lose their conference championship game. But now, I don't even know if, Dusty, this is our whole debate. I don't even know if you can count on that, right? If Colorado goes in and beats BYU in the Big 12 championship game, from a publicity and a notoriety perspective, it's the greatest thing that could happen for the Big 12. But from a money and an extra team in, the absolute worst, right? I mean, there's no guarantee on BYU if it's BYU. ACC-wise, I'm just thinking about teams
even
that
Miami
are between 2 and 1. Yes, exactly.
Tough. Miami sits there because Miami, again, they only dropped to 9. Miami could be 8. They could win the last 2 games, be in the last rankings at 8. And if they lost to SMU, it would not shock me if they were not in the fold and that they got leapfrogged by someone else. Though that second loss would not be in the regular season. It would be in an additional bonus game. So there's going to be a lot to unpack and discuss. But how we look at how we view these championship games, for the teams that win them, it's great. For the teams that lose them, especially in the in the ACC and the Big 12, it could really cost them and bite them. So I think it's the first year of this. We're gonna watch it all unfold together, and there's gonna be a lot of debate, a lot of discussion. And you know what? I'm here for it. It's pretty good for Sports Talk Radio.
Real quick before we break, though, and I know we're right up against it. Oh, you're okay for a second segment today, right?
Yes.
I know you got
yes.
okay. Chapstick writes, Army wins out, Boise wins out.
Yeah.
2 group of 5s in the playoffs?
No, I
don't think
think
so.
Boise wouldn't make it.
Yeah, Army
Army's
would
in.
get in, Boise wouldn't. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
But that Boise loss is to Oregon.
It is. There's no doubt. But, man, if they beat Notre Dame at a neutral site, that'll be a better win than anything that Boise's been able to do. I would be stunned. And undefeated. And now the other thing, again, you have to recognize them putting Tulane in the top 25, that would give Army a second top 25 win. So they'd have a top 10 win, neutral site against Notre Dame, and then a second potential top 25 win against Tulane. So that's why that Tulane movement is somewhat significant. But I have a hard time buying that Army's going to take down Notre Dame. But hey, man, Oklahoma knows. Oklahoma had to deal with that a few years ago. They escaped. Thank goodness.
Exactly.
that game against Army.
We got a break. We got more of Dusty Dvoracek coming up next right here on the Home of Sooner Fans. All right, welcome back into the Punch Show. We're hanging out a little earlier today with Dusty Dvoracek. So on some Sooner football, Dusty, we haven't talked about it yet, and I haven't even mentioned I'm live at Caven's today, Caven's Disaster Response Group, 405-573-3048. We always joke about it, the dreaded vote of confidence, right? Billy Napier got it at Florida, and they proceeded to get boat raced by Texas. But pretty strong words yesterday from Joseph Harris and Joe Castiglione, and I know there's a faction of the fan base that's angry, and they should be, and aren't happy, but it sounded to me like they're all in and doing whatever they can behind Brent Venables to get this program right.
Yeah, I believe they were both asked a question, right?
True, very true. There wasn't a statement made, right?
And Scott Strickland put that out the week of Texas just to let everyone know. I think they probably knew the quarterback wasn't playing. Good idea that was coming. Just prepare everybody for that. That's what I would expect them to say. That's what they need to say. I don't think anybody's coming out of their pocket $45 million to hand Brent Venables his walking papers. And I think it's very clear when he was given that extension last summer. You can disagree with the extension. You can be upset with the extension. That was given to him. Regardless of what happens this year, he's going to be the head coach. And they just reiterated that and their commitment to him last night. So not surprised whatsoever. And I really think it's not going to happen, but, social media is an interesting place. I'm sure chat rooms are an interesting place. And, all this, the buzz about replacing the coach and the big money people want to see something. He's not going anywhere. Okay, so Coach Venables is going to get another opportunity to get this thing right next season. And we'll see exactly what happens at offensive coordinator, who they go after. And I think that, I don't want to tell anybody what to do, but I think it would be much more productive to, rechannel that energy and that vitriol to wanting the head coach to be replaced and be removed to, trying to figure out and get behind whatever the next move is at offensive coordinator, and then obviously from a personnel standpoint, what they do both in the transfer portal and with the upcoming early signing period. So not surprised at all with what we saw. I do kind of wonder if that helps allow a lot of the people that have been chirping to move forward, because the reality is Brent Venables is not getting let go. They're not paying his buyout. He's not getting fired. And good to hear that from the president and athletic director yesterday.
I thought it was interesting that President Harris brought up the shifting NIL landscape.
Yes.
And kind of pointed toward the rev share that could be installed as soon as the start of next year. What did you make of that part of it?
I thought that was interesting too. I think that there's a lot of people in college football, coaches, athletic directors, when you talk to them, there is a lot of people that are ready for this rev share to happen, man. I really do. And when that happens, the money will come from the athletic department. And, there's an expected cap. The $20 million number has been thrown out there. Also, along with that, you have, there's supposed to be some enforcement arm that NIL is still there, but it's truly NIL. It's more of an endorsement arm as opposed to a pay-for-play model from collectives and outside money that would be, there would be rules and regulations against that taking place. Therefore, levels the playing field for, the big discrepancy in war chests and, however much who has the biggest collective or NIL budget, they're going to be able to accumulate the most players. It levels the field. And as an athletic director put it to me, it kind of goes back to, recruiting, what can the university sell, all those various things. Can they get to that place? I don't know. There's also people that I've heard from that seem to think that in some form or fashion, collectives and the NIL pay for play is still going to be a part of it. It's going to be addition to, this House versus NCAA case that's going to allow athletic departments to pay players directly. So everybody looks forward to getting to that place. When does it happen? How is the outside money that comes in still? How is that regulated? All a bunch of questions. But I like you, Josh. I thought that was interesting that he made mention of that.
Yeah, and one other thing before we get some text questions for Dusty at 405-651-3439. You talk to a lot of people across college football from every different school and in almost every different level. You just don't talk to coaches and players, administrators, ADs. Something you said really resonated. As much as it's going to hurt, I think everybody's ready to get this settlement going, right? Hey, let's go. We're dragging our you-know-what, and we're waiting for it to get to the courts, but let's get to it and let's see what this is going to look like so we can start – taking the initial financial hickey and move on from it.
Absolutely. Let's go.
Yeah.
I mean, let's go. And look, I think that there's been a lot of people that knew this was coming. I don't think it's crazy to think that some of the movement that we've seen, the shifting landscape of the conference realignment was in order to do that, to get financial houses in order, understanding that athletic budgets are only going to go up and you need to be able to have as much revenue as possible because everybody's not going to be able to – there's going to be, ceilings, there's going to be caps, but that doesn't mean everybody's going to be able to achieve those and reach those caps. So absolutely. And I think that, we're getting very close. It sounds like, that we're – in a football term, it sounds like we're in the red zone. At what point can they get it across the goal line? That's the real question.
All right. This is interesting. This one just came in from Will Fish, and he writes, why is it that when everyone agrees that Saban is the GOAT, that no one realizes how comparable BV's first 3 years, record-wise, is to Saban's first 3 years? Well, listen, you got to look beyond the record there. I mean, I think Saban was playing for a national championship in his third year. So, records be damned. But, whenever his third year at his third year at Alabama, he won a national championship, and that record is kind of minimized because he went 2-6. If you want to go back to LSU days, okay, that's fair. But still, they won a Sugar Bowl in his second season. If you really want to go back to Michigan State days, okay, you may have something. But, Dusty, I don't think anyone's going to go back to Michigan State days to try to compare the first 3 years of BV to Nick Saban.
I love Brent Venables. I look forward to and I welcome watching, them be able to get past this obstacle and this hurdle next year and in the near future. Let's not try to compare.
Thank you.
Any coach, let alone what's happening right now with Nick Saban. Okay? That's just there's certain things we should do and not do. And that's just one that I think everybody would agree. Let's probably not compare Nick Saban's career with anything that's currently going on. Is that okay to say? Not to completely clobber the texter's question or comparison,
right.
But I think that's a fool's errand in my opinion.
One more text here, and then, Josh, I have one more question going out the door. I won't keep it too long. Lloyd writes, I like Washington State's Ben Arbuckle, Dusty, a rising star at OC and a quarterback coach. Have you been around him? What do you know about him? You know much about Ben Arbuckle?
It's funny, Pete Thamel does a great job. He's got me hooked up with some different coordinators and different coaches the last couple of years. And before the year starts, I'll have some conversation with some coaches. Good for me. Familiarize myself, meet these guys, and, they'll ask me questions. Have conversations about the media, dealing with press conferences, these production meetings whenever we meet with them with TV, different things. And it's really, I love it. It's great. He called me last year. We talked for probably, half an hour, 45 minutes. And I liked him a lot. He comes from the Zach kind of Kitley tree, if you will, and Zach Kitley out of Texas Tech. Now, they were at Western Kentucky together, I believe. So air raid principles within this offense, high octane, super fast tempo. They've had success, when they were at Western Kentucky, as Bailey Zappi was lighting up, the scoreboard and breaking records, and been out at Washington State, and he's done it in different ways there. He obviously had Cam Ward there last season, new quarterback at the helm this year, but I was really impressed when I had a chance to talk with him. He does feel and seem like one of the bright, young, rising stars in the profession. So, I've not called one of his games. I haven't broke down a bunch of Washington State tape, so I'd be lying. But I can just tell you he's very well respected in the profession. Good. And if I would imagine he's at least somebody who's on your list. I think he should be, and he's somebody you vet and you look at. But it's the style of offense is, air raid principles, very up-tempo, very fast-paced, but he's done a really good job with quarterbacks, which I think is going to grab the attention for a lot of different people.
So, final question kind of dovetails off that. You talk to a lot of these guys. You can be a sounding board. They can be a sounding board for you, right, when you're wanting to learn things. Have you had guys reach out to you yet?
Who, offensive coaches?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No. I've not I'm not that high on the totem pole just yet. But I mean,
maybe here's a better way for me to put it for you.
Okay.
You would be a guy, and I'm not just saying like a Ben Arbuckle, but any, Dan Mullen, right? These people that you work with and you're around and you talk to, that maybe they realize, hey, here's an Oklahoma legend that still lives there. Hey, what do you think of Norman, or what do you think of that job? You haven't quite reached that point with anyone reaching out to you yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
And if I did, I mean,
you wouldn't be able to tell me.
Is it okay to say that I would lie to you and not tell you?
No. I wouldn't expect
I will say this. There have definitely been coaches in the past that have reached out to me when there was a opportunity or jobs potentially available, letting me know how much they would love an opportunity at that if there was anything I could do to help them out. So your question is not crazy to ask me. That has definitely happened. It is not in this certain situation. Have I texted and talked with Dan Mullen? Possibly.
Ooh, that's a cliffhanger. Dusty, have a great call this weekend. What do you got, LSU this weekend?
LSU in the Swamp, heading down to Gainesville, Florida for a 3:30 ABC SEC matchup. I just saw something today, as crazy as this is, that LSU is still very much, I say very much.
Oh, yeah.
There's a real possibility out there that they could be in the SEC championship game. So,
Absolutely.
Which means this thing has got SEC championship implications as well as, I guess, playoff implications, which I did not think was even the case when I got the assignment on Sunday. So it should be a fun weekend of college football.
Hey, be safe, Dusty. We really appreciate you, man. Have a great day.
See you, bud.
It's my guy, Dusty Dvoracek.